Welcome back to the Get Loved Up podcast, your number one resource for inspiration and motivation to live your purpose, make healthy living a priority, and thrive doing what you love. I'm your host, Koya Webb, a small town girl who chased her dreams and caught them, a former track and field athlete who healed using spirituality and yoga, and an entrepreneur who didn't let sexual assault, racism, and insecurities dim her light. And now it's your turn to allow these episodes with some of the top voices in spirituality, wellness, and entrepreneurship to inspire you to thrive. Let's get loved up together. Devi Brown is a master well-being educator, certified multimodality healer, and entrepreneur. Devi is devoted to spiritual connection meant to aid in the healing of generational trauma, rooted in sharing tangible healing modalities to support radical self-acceptance. Devi serves as a Chief Impact Officer at Chopra Global, the leading meditation and wellness education company founded by Dr. Deepak Chopra. In addition to leading diversity and inclusion initiatives for the company, she serves as an executive educator at Chopra events globally. She is also the voice of daily meditation on the Chopra Wellness app. As a seasoned broadcaster and host of leading spirituality podcast Dropping Gems on iHeartMedia's Black Effect Network, Devi leads transformative conversations and offers education in spiritual psychology, meditation, energy, and metaphysical healing of individuals with a focus in the BIPOC community. In 2017, Devi released her first book, Crystal Bliss, and most recently joined as an advisor to Emmy Award-winning media and storytelling company, Religion of Sports, and is a founding board member of the Mental Wealth Alliance. You can learn more about Devi and her work on her website, devibrown.com. And you can follow her on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Devi, it's so good to have you.
So happy to be here.
I'm just so happy just dancing with you out on my patio, looking at the water. Our souls feel like they wanted to hang out and we're like dancing together. I didn't even want to do the podcast anymore. I just wanted to hang out looking at the water.
No, we had the wind chimes going. We had our girl India, our replaying.
So good.
Moments like that, it's just so important. You know, it's like, even in that moment we just shared, it's such a deep reminder for me of like, even if you just have a couple of minutes to like be in your joy, to be in sisterhood, to move your body, like never miss the chance, you know?
Ashe. Ashe. That's so true. Like even when we hugged, it was just like, it wasn't just a quick like, hey, it was just like an embrace, a soul embrace. And I honor that. And it just feels good to be met there with like, there's time. There's time for hugs, long hugs. There's time for dancing. There's time for water with strawberries.
There's time.
There's time.
Wow. You're an exquisite hugger, by the way.
Thank you. You are too. I was like, oh, yes, we're falling into this hug. And then we're both like, inhale, exhale. Like, we're receiving all of this. I felt
your heartbeat. I was like, we're so connected.
Yes, that was so good. And it was so great being on your podcast, Dropping Gems. And, you know, even on there, I mean, of course, I see you all around in social and all the work that you do. But, you know, even speaking with you a little deeper over your podcast, I was like, we are soul sisters. Like, it was just a lot of things that we just like highly resonate on. And it just felt so good to feel seen and heard just by the way you hold space.
Thank you so much. That show was so good. And it was like a super, super listener favorite episode.
Yay.
Everybody was so excited. They were like, Koya.
That's so amazing. Well, I know people are going to be so excited about this episode because you'd be dropping gems, literally. And I guess I want to start with kind of, when did you start cultivating this depth? And maybe even desire for a deeper knowledge when it comes to spirituality?
Wow. You know, I've really been exploring that. I'm actually pretty excited to elaborate on it because that's been at the forefront of my mind really probably for the last year. I've been kind of like having that in my mind's eye and just kind of exploring different rooms of that thought. You know, it's interesting. And you know, I'm curious if you resonate with this in your journey, because the more I look at my spiritual path, it's been so beautiful and freeing to realize how much I've always been on it. You know? Part. Yeah. To remember really specific key moments in my childhood when I was aware of my consciousness or of some of the misalignment in my life as a young person, and realizing that, oh, this is there's gonna be a cause and effect for this. This is gonna serve some kind of a purpose, or this might be one of the patterns I'm connecting to that is the curriculum perhaps of my spiritual journey. And so like that's been, I think parts of that have been a little sad to look at sometimes, but also really beautiful and just like always a confirmation of God's presence in my life. So I think, I mean, I remember being on a spiritual journey from a very young age. Did not necessarily know what that meant or what it would entail, but I remember being awake to a lot very young. But when you're younger, you know, you're typically, you're just at the will of your household, at the will of your school system, at the will of society. So you don't always get to act on that knowingness. But I did have awareness around that. And I've always been a seeker. My mind never stops. I am always curious. I am always creative. I'm always trying to understand how things work, but specifically how the emotional body works, how, you know, our brains work. And so I remember being young and kind of like just kind of studying people or studying circumstance and making connections. And then I think, you know, life happens, and I was also messy in many things, you know, and at different junctures of the journey. But I think there's always, I think to really bring this in, I think there's always been an awareness for me that there was more available.
Ashe, that is more available. That is so precious. And I do resonate with that because I feel like we are spiritual beings having human experiences. So as we enter this human experience, we already have our purpose. We already have like all that stuff within us. And then as we're born into whatever, like you said, families, we start functioning in our human experience, but we always have that divine love inside, that high resonance of knowingness of what love feels like, you know? So
Wow, that's beautifully said. Yeah.
Very resonant. And what do you feel like has been, because you've done so many beautiful things, what has been the thing that today stands out for you as like the most nourishing thing that you do in your spiritual practice? Because I know you can give me a list of 20. So I got to ask the most nourishing. I got to ask the most.
God, even, you know, it's so funny. Right when you said that, I started thinking of my practice, and my practice felt like a lover, like a companion, like just the most romantic, exciting aspect of my life.
Yes.
So I'm like, oh, what do I love most from him, from my practice?
Your practice bae.
My practice bae, yes. You know, right now, the piece that I'm loving the most has really been around dance.
Ooh.
It's really been around like the pandemic. Dance really saved my life. You know, I created a really beautiful music practice where I was just kind of designing or finding these really different, not normally in my wheelhouse kind of playlists. And I was connecting to music I wasn't familiar with. So I didn't have these, you know, preconceived notions or these attachments or these memories connected to any of the songs.
Wow.
It was just music that was great music that I didn't really know, that I allowed myself to kind of surrender into. And so I had this practice every night where I'd enjoy a little THC. I'd enjoy a little indica, light some incense, put on one of these like delicious playlists and just move my body and stretch, or, you know, self-massage, abhyanga, or do movement. And it really changed my relationship with my body. It changed my relationship with my softness. And it also brought me a lot of like vibrant physical health as well. So for me, that really connected me mind, body, and soul in new ways.
Yes.
So I'm still really enjoying that piece of my practice a lot.
I love that. I love it so much because the ancestors have downloaded, you have to dance daily. And I even made it a part of my company. And one of our hashtags is dance daily. But I have to be honest, I dance a lot, but not daily. So you're reminding me to bring that in. Because just as you say that, like my whole body starts like, yay, dance. We want to dance every day. It feels so good. And our ancestors taught us, like in every culture around the world, dance. So I think it's beautiful that, you know, at such a hard time for the world, that your body and your soul brought you back to dance.
Yes.
Yeah, that's phenomenal.
And created like new pathways for joy in a way that I just hadn't experienced it yet, you know? And so even that for me was such a beautiful reminder of like, stay fluid with your practice. Yeah. And every season there's opportunity to kind of reevaluate, like what are the pieces of it that still feel really serving? Where can I get creative and invite more in? What can I release? Because maybe that's not the way I need to be fueled right now. So that was it. It really ignited me in some special ways.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to bring it back because I do my yoga practice, meditation, and breath work. And so when I brought it in, when I was doing it regular, I'd bring it into my yoga practice. Like I'd either dance at the beginning or dance at the end. So I get it in. But I really love dancing like you did at night. That's when the funnest dance. That's when the twerk sessions happen.
What? It was like a mixture of like, you know, sacred African dance meets Two Live Crew meets like, you know, yoga. And
we can just stop and just have a dance party right now. If you're listening, pause us and go have a dance party and then come back. Yeah, that's so beautiful. I love that. That makes me want to ask you about something that I recently learned that you were doing when it comes to mental wealth. And so I would love to hear more about that initiative and the vision and the goals with mental wealth.
So that is actually my brother and one of my best friends, Charlemagne the God's Foundation, the Mental Wealth Alliance. And I was a founding board member of the foundation, and his vision is to equip over 2 million people with free therapy over the next several years. And so that's our mission, is really creating events, creating the partnerships, creating the pathways to get more people connected with the healing tools that they need and that they deserve to have, irregardless of, you know, financial standing, cultural background, or access.
That is so beautiful. We'll
Thank
definitely
you.
be dropping the link for that. And that's so beautiful, because we need it. I know I had a lot of therapy, more therapy than I've ever had in my life during the last 2 years, from EMDR to regular talk therapy to just so many different modalities, Akashic readings. Like I just had the healers coming in because I was like, this is a perfect time to heal all of that, you know, trauma, ancestral trauma. And I was just like, I'm here, I'm at home, so I'm going to do the work. And now I'm feeling the benefits of doing that work. How was that for you? Like, how was the work? You know, the dance for sure, but how was that deeper work during the time?
Gosh, I so relate to everything that you said, because I think, you know, it's funny because as someone, I remember reading like my first self-growth book at like 11. Like I got like a teens version of a self-help book, and I started reading some of the other big books. But, you know, it's interesting because it's like there's always more, right? And so even the things that we have healed pieces of, there might be new viewpoints of it or new facets of it that we can spend time with and make it drop in even more deeply, or connect us with a way to use it as a higher service because we understand it better. And so I feel like I've been hyper aware of my spiritual curriculum for a long time, like certain patterns that are my specific patterns I'm meant to be in process with. And I recognized immediately when the pandemic hit, even when we thought it was just like 3 weeks in your house, or
that part.
We
knew this was impasse. We were like, oh, no. This is feeling way longer than that.
I recognized immediately, one, that it was going to be some years. Two, that this was real divine opportunity, that maybe I had been doing this work all this time in preparation for this moment. So I felt like when the pandemic hit, one, I became very aware of new ways that I was ready to work on my healing. But two, I also recognized like, what an opportunity. What an opportunity to spend time with myself. What an opportunity to kind of get in some of that wounding and really excavate or nourish. And I remember I was on a Zoom call with a group of women, and it was just kind of like this little homegirl call that one of my girlfriends had created. And it was like in the first 2 weeks of the pandemic, and this question hit me. And I said to the group, all you need to think about is ask yourself this question: who am I being called to become right now? Who am I being called to become right now? Because we have the space for whatever the answer to that is.
Right.
And I really knew that I was called to heal certain big themes in my life in new ways. So I let the first 2 years just be in hermit mode. You know, I was still working. I was still raising a child. I got a toddler, but I was doing very similar to you. I was stacking my weeks with every kind of healing connection I could ever do. I was remembering previous healing work I had done and what worked, what didn't. Where can I expand on that? So I so relate to that. I was, especially for me, I really leaned on, I had spent a lot of my life kind of in cognitive therapy. And then I really realized there was a new way I needed to move all of that information I had come into from my crown down into my heart. And so I connected personally to a lot of like somatic therapy and somatic experiencing as some of the work that I knew I needed to do, rebuilt my practice, and really just asked myself some of the more challenging questions about myself and got really honest with the answers.
What were some of those questions?
You know, I think some of those questions were really around, as someone that is highly, highly sensitive, which I wish there had been language around that as a child, because I think everyone used to always refer to me as a deep feeler, right? But that also kind of minimized for me the experience I was having. I'm a very highly sensitive person. I am an empath to the umpteenth degree, and I didn't recognize that there was a buffet of choice in how I could care for myself. And so one of those questions that I was really asking myself is, are you really caring for you?
Right.
You know, like what is martyrdom programming? What is like ego righteousness and the way that you show up in service, or in the way that you have been going about being of support to people? And what is a more authentic way to do that actually honors you first?
Yes.
And that was kind of hard, because then you kind of got to get into the crevices of like, oh wow, what was actually codependence? You know, what was actually maybe some over responsibility because of the way that it kept you from having to grow yourself.
Right.
You know? And so I tried to get really honest about those pieces, and that's hard to look at at first, especially if you have been showing up powerfully for people your whole life, and it's been meaningful for them too. But then looking at, well, multiple things can be true at once. So yes, and some of that was also in service to you hiding from you.
You know, I'm going to want you to break that down, because I'm also an empath and an HSP, and a lot of my community is too. And so I really want you to break down some of those terms and what they mean to you when it comes to codependence. I remember my therapist said, well, it sounds like a little codependence. I was like, I'm not codependent, I'm independent.
Yes. Oh my God, I've said that too.
What do you mean codependent? I'm not going to depend on nobody.
And little did I know, very, very much grew up in a codependent household, and therefore very codependent in my relationships and work. So I would love for you to break that down.
And you know, the thing that I think is so important, because sometimes when we hear these titles, we do get defensive, right? Like, and we do, especially if we've been doing a lot of work on ourselves, because we feel like it is almost a betrayal of the work, or we feel like, no, you don't understand. So this is what I've been through, but this is what I've been doing about X, Y, and Z. And it's like, and there's more.
There's so much more. And I think a lot of people say it, but not many people break it down.
Yeah.
I think it's really important for us to break it down, because, you know, it allows that defensiveness to go away. Because for me, even during that therapy session, I still didn't get it. It took me reading books, Codependent No More. And and years of practice before I really understand, like, you know, this is part of being an empath and you know, HSP, and you can create the healthy boundaries so that you don't have to function in that way.
Oh my gosh. I'm like, yes, it's all part of being an empath.
It is. It really is, though. Because people are acknowledging that part now more, but they're not acknowledging the codependency.
Yeah.
Or they're not acknowledging the martyrdom.
Yes.
And so I think we should I want you personally, because everything's different for everyone, but
it's felt differently, by everyone. I think the way that I can speak to it and how it had been showing up for me personally. What I have found in myself and in some observations I've made in others is the way that trauma affects us. There's multiple pathways for how that manifests. None of us experience it the same, but there are similarities in a lot of our stories. There are multiple pathways that manifests into, but there are two specific pathways that I've really been in observation of that seem to be the majority of how we experience our trauma. So we have all experienced trauma. Everyone that has ever lived. It is the initiation of being human. It seems like, you know, it is the learning. It is the tool of learning for the human experience. It really can guide us in going two ways. And one is more of a narcissistic behavior. So it's more of taking on or silencing the feelings inside of ourselves. And typically trauma, and depending on how it manifested, especially in childhood, it can really mean that you don't have the ability to feel or understand authentic interpersonal intimacy with other people and within yourself. And there was not a foundation that was set that allowed you to be deeply seen for your unique, authentic nature as an individual being, as a soul. That you did not necessarily receive love in the way that your body, mind, and soul required and really needed it to be role modeled for you. The pathway of more of the narcissistic behavior, which eventually manifests into the abuse of others, and there's multiple ways that can be displayed. It's a spectrum that's very vast. But that typically leads one to only be inside one's personal shame and personal experience and personal defensiveness in a way that not only cannot reflect authentic love to another, but also cannot really receive it or know that it's being shared or given to them. So that's one side. And that's typically the side that manifests as someone that takes on characteristics of what we'd call an abuser, or more of a dominant force in the relationship. The other pathway, which is the pathway that I found myself on, and we do sometimes take on some characteristics of both of these pathways that I'm describing. The other pathway, which is often referred to as like more of a codependent pathway or a pathway of over-responsibility, is the one that believes it needs to earn love, that you have to earn being seen, that you have to earn having value, that you have to earn worth. And it's typically brought out by that other personality trait. When someone withholds from you, we take it personally, not necessarily understanding that they don't actually even know how to see us or give us the love that's needed. But when there is something being withheld, it stimulates in the codependent person this desire to come into a peace by earning the love, earning the respect, earning the validation. So you are overdoing, you are doing at the expense of self, while often not receiving anything in return. So you're creating these dynamics that eventually become all of the relationships of your life. You'll start to notice, once you really put a magnifying glass on it, that you may show up in codependence at work. You may be trying to earn all of these things at work, or come in and kind of really minimize yourself at work. You might do that in friendships. You might do that in your loving relationships with your children. But it is this actually really awful kind of dynamic of feeling victimized and unseen, and then also feeling like you're in charge of fixing and proving to everyone else, which can then be a real burden on the other people in your life. And you've also cut off the receptive flow. So there's not a vulnerable space inside of you to receive even the love or the help or the care that someone's trying to give you. So in the smallest way, that manifests as someone offering you help and you say, no, I got it. I'll do it. No, I'll handle it.
Yeah.
And then you're also walking around saying, no one ever helps me. I'm doing and doing for all these. Who checks on me? Who does for me? But not noticing all the times that you reject it and then cut off the ability to be in closeness with another.
Absolutely.
So, and that is everything that I just shared. I want to express is from my personal view in the way that I understand it, but it also just scratches the surface on the way that these dynamics can manifest in us and in our lives. It's just a piece.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Because I know it's very vulnerable share, and it's very deep, because it's something, as you said, you're still working with it. When it's ingrained since childhood, you're working with it for most of your life. Even when you got it, things can swing. You're like, wait a minute. I'm there again, right?
And it can feel good too, right? And so that's the part that is misleading for us. We do get that dopamine supply,
right,
when you've been trying to say, okay, I got it, I'll do it, I'll help you, I'll do da. And then sometimes that does click and work. And then you're like, see? I knew it. Yeah, this is who I am. This is what I do. And all of that can be true, but not if it's at the expense of yourself.
Yes.
Not if you're using it as a tool of avoidance for you, saying, I give and give and give. And that's why I don't have the time to really care for myself. Or that's why I don't have the time to investigate my own pain, because I'm showing up for people that are in more pain. Or here is the area that I'm really strong and able to be of service. So, it becomes this real seductive dance sometimes that you have to really watch closely on. Am I doing this because I want to? Am I doing this while also feeling full myself? Or am I doing this because I'm in that programming of lack or of earning or of proving?
Yeah, that's so powerful. One thing a coach told me that helped me so much is like, you can love others, but you cannot love others to the detriment of yourself. And I play that in my head because I have to tap in. I'm so used to loving. Like, I had another coach say, you might want to go to love. Like, are you a love addict or something like that? Because my companies get loved and all this. And I was like, I don't know, but that's a good thing to be, right? And I had to learn that there's a boundary. There's levels to this love thing, right? And once you start getting to the point where you're loving to the detriment of yourself, whether it's staying up too late or going more than you wanted to go or doing more than you signed up for, but then, well, you're here now, so I got to do it, right? So I think for me, it was really learning healthy boundaries. Healthy boundaries help me the most in anything. So can you share, whether it be like a book or what was it that really helped you maintain, or what helps you maintain the balance? Because I know you're a very giving, loving, empathic person. And what helps you maintain that balance of continuing to love and give and serve, but knowing where it turns into that martyrdom or that codependency?
I think first I will say, and there's a lot of psychologists talking about this right now. The term love addict is so dangerous.
I felt like it was dangerous to me.
Yeah, it's really dangerous
Yeah.
because it also creates some of that false belief that the behavior is actually love that we're displaying, or that it's like there's still something really good about it, but maybe I'm just doing a little too much. Codependence is not love. Codependence is a performative experience of love, but the reason it always feels so empty is because love is always reciprocal and love is always led by self first.
Yeah.
So we have to be so careful as big feelers, as empaths, that we don't equate that behavior that is actually so toxic for us to being love. It is the way we normalized our experience and the way we tried to make sense of our behavior or the things that were happening in our lives, because maybe we didn't have the deepest authentic love actually role modeled. So it was our piece of understanding it. I think for me, I've read a bunch of things over time, but I think nothing allows you to create boundaries like actually getting to know yourself and being willing to be with yourself through some of the shame of revisiting those choices and those old programmings, and then being in practice with what is. You cannot establish boundaries without second by second, minute by minute personal investigation and the willingness to just continue to be curious when you're perceiving yourself as getting it wrong.
Right.
And I think for me, and anybody that knows me, like the number one thing, I was on the phone with a girlfriend earlier and she was like, I love your boundaries. Okay. Devi and her boundaries, like, it's like for some, it may be the thorn in their side. For other, it's deeply, admirable, but my boundaries are my superpower. My boundaries are my favorite thing about my life.
Yes.
Now that I am so myself and in such a deep remembrance of my power and my gifts and all of me, I'm just unwilling to minimize in any way for any reason. Yes. And I'm also very clear that I don't require validation from anyone. I don't require it. I don't need it. I am full. My life is full. Even when I'm just with myself, my life is overflowing. And so I think a big prerequisite to being able to have boundaries that are actually useful in your life is you have to grow your internal world. You have to feel so safe inside of yourself, because the desire to kind of fall into some of that old programming or to allow your boundaries to be destroyed really comes from this idea that somehow deep down, maybe you're not worth it. Maybe you're not really lovable. Maybe you're not really valuable. And so it's this fear of rejection. It's this fear of withholding. It's this fear of someone not liking you, even if you don't know if that person likes themselves, right? But it's really about your own like for you. And so I'm at a place in my life right now where obviously I'm alive and human, so I am far from perfect. That's just off top. But I really love me. I really respect me. I really admire myself. I'm a good person, and I know that without a shadow of a doubt. And part of the systems of that kind of over-responsible or codependent behavior is also if you've been made to feel wrong about yourself in your life.
Right.
If you've ever been made, which many of us have been, even when the person did not intend for that to be how we internalized it. If you've been made to feel wrong about yourself or wrong about your choices, there's always this piece of you that's like, but what if I'm wrong? Or maybe I am a bad person, or maybe there's something off about me, So first coming into the acceptance of being enough, whatever that is, just because I'm here.
Right.
And then not hating yourself or being judgment of yourself for perceivedly getting it wrong. We are all getting it wrong all the time. It's what we're here for, you know? So I think my internal life, really building that out, has allowed me to have the foundation that my boundaries can always be supported by.
Right.
And then I think also just knowing, one, I have a right to say no. Two, if my no upsets you, that is on you. And I think, what was this next piece I wanted to come into? It was, I think the biggest piece that's so important when we're starting to work with our boundaries is understanding that you don't make boundaries for individual people.
Right.
And I think that's where it gets hard. And that's also where it becomes a lot more work and effort.
Right.
You're not making or setting a boundary for every individual person that you're bumping up against. You decide, what is the boundary for my life based on who I am? And then anytime anyone walks up to the counter and asks for something or does something, I experience it based on the boundary I've set for myself.
Right.
So then it feels even less personal as we're getting into it with other people, because we're saying, well, it's not about you. This isn't personal. This is my boundary for me, you know? And so that really helps. And so I guess I have a lot, but one of my small boundaries would be, say, typically, like, my sleep is really important to me, and that's a non-negotiable for me now. And I sacrifice sleep my entire adult professional life, right? I was a card-carrying member of like Club Grind, Club Busy. And so now for me, sleep is non-negotiable. And I know at minimum, I have to sleep 8 hours a night, at least 5 days a week, period, at least, period. There is nothing that will get around that for me. So I've identified that I'm willing to be kind of more malleable with that for 2 of the other days, because I know my system can support less sleep for 2 days a week. So that means I'm going to say no to a lot of things.
Yeah.
And it's not personal. So if someone wants to do something with me, if I don't have the space to also say, I'm going to get between 7 and 8 hours of sleep a night, it's a no. It's a no.
Yeah.
But it becomes easier because the boundary is set based on how I want to feel about myself and my life.
Yeah.
And it's not about what another person is asking for, requiring of, or what they want me to do.
It's not personal.
Yeah.
And that's really hard when you have the boundaries, a lot of people will take it as personal. And how do you deal with, setting a boundary, experience someone you really love and value taking it personal? How do you handle that? Because I feel like a lot of people are starting to set healthy boundaries, but not knowing how to handle relationships when they fall out because of those boundaries.
It's not my business. How you're feeling about me doing what is really nourishing for me in my life. That's not about me. And also, so just as when we're doing boundaries, and I think this is actually so important. As we do boundary work with ourselves, we have this opportunity to be in constant observation of our own triggers, right? So it's like, I notice that I set a boundary, that person gets upset, I'm triggered, I'm investigating myself to understand how this feels. When was the first time I felt triggered in this way, and why does this feel so charged? So one, observing your own charge response to someone else being upset about your boundary. The second piece would be extending them the same compassion and courtesy, but not trying to do their work for them.
Right.
So if someone is upset at me because of what they're perceiving they're not getting from me, what I know to be true based on the work I've done with myself is that upsetness started long before I entered the equation. So they're upset about what they're perceiving as a need I'm not meeting for them.
Right.
That upsetness is triggered by all the other times in their life they felt a need wasn't being met, which, if you follow that trail down long enough, most likely will eventually land them at the first time they felt that in childhood from a caregiver or someone they knew.
Right.
So knowing that, I cannot allow myself to take it personally because that is a bucket I could never fill.
Right.
Because even if I meet your need in this moment because you want me to, it's only temporary, because that's a void inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm putting a temporary Band-Aid by negating my boundaries and minimizing my own needs. I'm creating a temporary Band-Aid for you that'll only in this moment make you feel better about yourself, but ultimately does not do the surgery that's required for the void that exists inside of you that stemmed from someone decades ago or many people over the years. So when I started looking at my boundaries from that perspective, it became simple for me to be in them because I also understood that person is going through the same fight or flight about wanting me to meet this need so that they can have it proved to them that they matter and they're valuable. The same process is happening to them that I'm fighting to keep for myself.
Right.
So when I bring it down to that understanding, well, who am I going to choose? What's the more important choice to be made? The choice is me.
Every single time.
Every time.
Every single time. And I think a lot of times when we go back to what we were talking about before, we'll put someone else's need when we're in that mindset. We're like, okay, well, they need this to be happy. So even though it doesn't feel good to me, I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
And that's when it comes
and what happens, it never makes them happy.
Never.
And
because it didn't start with you in the first
more
place.
And more.
Yeah. And I think that's so important to call out because it's easy, especially when it comes to your friends or your family or people that you love and adore, to put that quick Band-Aid on, like you said, and say, okay, well, this time. And then you're frustrated and you feel like you've been taken advantage of. And it's like, oh, wait, you had a choice. To do what you needed in that situation. And I think that's where it comes full circle, with what being a sensitive person.
Oof.
Mm-hmm. We're going deep. Something told me we were going to go deep on healthy boundaries today, like before we started. And I'm like, okay, because we can't talk enough about it.
You know what, too? You know what just came up for me hearing you say that is like something that I'm trying to do as I respect my boundary work and respect others' boundary work. I really do try hard to be very upfront with friendships, very upfront with the people in my life in a way that is not me kind of hemming and hawing around it like, well, because, I'm really busy, right? That tone, right? Like that tone conveys that there is opportunity to trample on what I'm saying or turn this into a dialogue instead of a declaration. And it's like, instead of, well, I can't do it because I'm really busy, but I wish I could, or, it's just, oh, I can't do that right now.
Right. Oh my goodness. I love that so much better.
I can't do that right now,
Absolutely.
and I've had people that will push, right? Because they're in their space of healing as well. And the thing that's been wonderful for me is not getting upset or feeling moved or even judging them for them trying to push my boundary. It's, I hear you, still no.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to get into the fiber of it? Well, I have an executive position. I'm a single mother of a small child. I have my own company. On top of that, I have a podcast. I have various things that I'm working on. I'm writing my second book. And so any free time I have outside of that is 100% in service to me. No, I cannot.
Go deep. Okay.
It's like, okay.
Dropping gems. And I feel like hearing that dialogue is so clear.
Yeah.
And it's from a space of love. And it's not like you went there first. You went there, okay, if you need deeper explanation, which you don't have to do, but
but sometimes I say, this might be a learning for you so that you can get outside of your experience and understand that you might be asking far more from someone than you realize,
right?
Or far more than you're willing to give. And I think also too, when we do this boundary work, we also have to be willing to turn kindnesses down from other people because we know we don't have the space to reciprocate.
Absolutely.
So I've had people, in my life that say, God, I would love to spend more time with you. Or Devi, I feel really connected to you. I would love to build on our friendship or grow it. And sometimes it's people that I really feel that way too. But then it's me saying, I really am feeling the strength of this connection and I would love that deeply. But I also want to be honest about the amount of time that I have. I'm not an everyday friend for people. I am someone that will respond between 1 and 5 days late to a text message because that is how my life is set up right now. And it's not for a lack of a desire. But that is my life, and I am unwilling to exhaust myself to try to keep up on someone else's timeline. So if we have the flexibility to be able to catch up once every few months, if we have the flexibility to check in on texts, but then also not be in judgment if we're not swooping in, then yes, I would love to build.
That's so beautiful. I'm glad you called that out, because I feel like I'm that for people, and I also require that. But I do find myself replying a lot frequently. But I have so many people that are surprised when maybe they've missed a text of mine, and they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And I'm like, "That's fine. That's okay."
Yeah.
And so many friends, it's like we check in. It's like a month later, and like, what's going on? And that's something that I feel like my closest friendships, we're able to drop in weekly, drop in monthly, drop in even some people a couple times a year, and still be back at that place. Like when we were at my house dancing on the balcony. And if I don't hear from you from a month from now, there's not going to be any love lost. And I think that's really important to speak, because we might see other people like have closer friendships. And like, oh, I want that. But knowing that might not be in alignment for you all right now. In another season, it might. And I just think that that's so important to call out and not take personally, because if we're all prioritizing ourselves, like you just said, we have different levels of friendship with every single person in our life.
And that piece that you just said, I think is so powerful, because then we also get to be willing to really look at the relationships in our lives with a microscope, right? Because for me, it's monumentally important that the closest people in my life are on their own path of wholeness, because you're not looking to me to patch up empty spaces inside of you. You are learning how to fill yourself, how to meet your own needs, which is not to say that any of us are in this alone. You need me. I'll drop everything to come. When I know it's a real authentic need, I'll do whatever I need to do to get to you, to be with you. But there are things that are not that we're always kind of pressing and requiring of other people, and very, very rarely can people get outside of themselves enough to actually know what you're asking that other person for, or what sacrifices they're making to meet that need for you.
Right.
Like one of my non-negotiables is like, I just don't look at my phone after about 6 p.m. I just don't. I'm just not going to look at it. So I'm not going to see nothing. My mama lives down the street. So if it's an emergency, someone's going to find me. But like I work a lot, and it's important to me that my son after dinner knows he has my 100% full attention. There is nothing that is going to get in my way. There is nothing more important than my son feeling loved. And so if you're contacting me about work, or getting this email to you, or sending something based on your urgency, well, then you haven't really looked at what's important in my life. If you're feeling a certain kind of way because I didn't get that email fired off that you sent past 5, and you're wanting, some acknowledgement before the morning, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And how are you not seeing me and what's important in my life,
Yeah. I think that's so important, especially when it comes to work relationships and business, to have those healthy boundaries and communicate them, and know everyone's is different. Also, you can't get mad at a person who wants to hit you up at 8, 1, 2, 3. You have to know, well, they're spread out. And like you were saying earlier, respect them for that, but also let them know like, oh yeah, my hours are between this and this. And I think there's so many nuances to the communication. But
I always say message me. Like, feel free to message. I just want you to know.
Just don't expect a response.
I'm not going to see it. Like, my time is 6 a.m. 6 a.m. is when I'm going to go through everything I missed the night before, But send it. Work on your flow that works for you. But then just don't require me to respond.
I think that's important. That is so important for you to call out and for people to hear, because it helps them have a healthier dynamic in relationships. And I think right now relationships, I know for me, like relationships have grown the most over the last couple of years, because I've had time to sit and not only work on myself, but also work on the way that I show up for others in a healthy, mindful way. And in the relationships and in that communication, have you found it very difficult, more difficult in work, more difficult in personal relationships to set that healthy boundaries, or?
It's made my life immensely easy.
Yeah.
Like it honestly shocked me to my core, because I also avoided doing all of this for years, right? I hemmed and hawed, and I was kind of did a little dance. Well, I can't really do it like this, but maybe I would, I did that for years. And I noticed, it's been miraculous in my life.
Yeah.
I noted, but this is also spirit. This is how God works. You set an intention, it will be made manifest, and it will be done with grace and ease. And my intention is to always be healed with grace and ease. My days of learning through my pain body are gone. Like I hear the whispers, and I also honor myself. And so I've actually noticed that, like, setting boundaries in the ways that I've just expressed has made my life not just easier, but it has elevated the amount of respect that people have for me. From the corporate setting to the personal setting, I have people let me know privately, even that I work with, that like your boundaries inspire me. I didn't even know that was possible. And I didn't know boundaries could be shared with such grace or softness either. Because even the word boundary, it makes it seem like it is a damn fence with an electric charge and barbed wire and a some kind of a concrete wall, like my boundaries are up. Like that's what you think. And it's like, oh no, well, this is a boundary for me. This is just where the field ends, because I need to stay in my garden. The garden just ends here. But I'm not saying that it doesn't also have a gate that you can come into. It's just my boundaries are very soft and fluid and beautiful. And so I've noticed that everything has fallen in line, and the relationships that have been, any relationships that may have had some challenge around those boundaries, were just ones that needed to lightly slough off anyway. It wasn't necessary to maintain the relationship, because I will not maintain anything that requires me to be minimized at all.
Absolutely. Ashe. That's so important. And I think a lot, as women of color, that minimization happens often and a lot. And so I kind of want to go in there a little bit, because when you're feeling like, and every day, like you're going to the workplace and I'm not enough, and I'm not seen, I'm not heard, I'm not respected, but you still have to function in that way. What is your advice to people who are like, man, I'm starting to feel this. I want to start setting these healthy boundaries, but oof.
Wow. I think the first place to come into play with is start to notice, are you using the workspace to work out your spiritual curriculum? Has the workspace become an extension of how you've related to authority, how you've related to other people, how you've related to your own value and brilliance or your own minimization? So let's see if there is a bigger theme at play that pattern is now reflected in at work. I think a lot of us, especially in the workspace, because it's a little bit looser than family, but at the same time, it's kind of creating the same constructs of a dysfunctional family system, right? You have all these people with all these life experiences coming together that have walked in the door having experienced things you know nothing about, that are projecting on you, that you're projecting on. So I think, one, when we're in the workspace with our careers, noticing that dynamic of, does everything have to be equated to my personal worth? Because if everything becomes a battle about our worth, we will lose every single time.
Say that again.
If everything becomes a battle about our worth, we will lose every single time. Every time.
Whew.
you're going to battle over something that is inherent. It's already inside of you, and you're leaking energy every time you're trying to prove to someone else what your worth is instead of removing yourself and being in the value that is you.
Ashe. That is just so powerful. I know a lot of people need to hear that. And I know just me hearing that, it's just like, if you're in any situation where you don't feel worthy, you don't feel valued, you have an option to be there. You have an option. And if you're choosing to be there, you're choosing to experience what you're experiencing and learn and grow and thrive from it. It is a choice. Girl, I got chills all over my arm. Y'all see it? It's just so important.
It's a choice.
It's a choice.
God, I'm so happy you said that, because even in every moment, investigate, is there a choice to be made? We can trick ourselves. We can come into our ego. We can come into our victimizing. And when I say even the word victimizing or victimhood, it is not a judgment of you. You feel that way because of the experiences that you did not give your consent for. It was programming that you didn't necessarily, as a human, ask for in this life, right? But it's part of perhaps a greater spiritual curriculum at play that maybe our souls did want to experience. But you can always come into choice. There is always a choice to be made. It may not be the choice you think you want, like in the relationship, leave the job, change yourself, grow yourself. It may not feel the most comfortable to make those choices or the various others that are to be made, but there is a choice. There is a choice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think when you make that choice, you never know when it's going to enhance the job or enhance the relationship or align you with something that is in more alignment. But as long as you stay in that low vibrational energy, how can you align with something that's better? How is it even possible? Because there's no room.
There's no room. You have to make space for more. I think, you know what? And coming back to kind of what we were talking about earlier about like those relationships that may not last the length. Who said that every relationship was supposed to last forever? Right? Like there comes in that control and that idea that there isn't more available to us. That, well, if this relationship leaves, even if it's been a long-term one, friendship or otherwise, well, if this relationship leaves, like what will I have?
Right.
Well, you just don't know until you make space.
That's right.
In my experience, it's been that every time I have allowed a relationship to naturally fall off without trying to grasp and hold it together, you know, or when I've made sometimes the real challenging decision to say, this is not what I want for my life. This is not the kind of experience I want to be having with anyone. And I've made the choice to either confront it, have a conversation about it, and leave it. 100% of the time, I tell you 100% of the time, massive ease have flown into my life. And I've been immediately, and by immediately, I mean literally within days, I have come into a new experience with someone that is of a higher vibration, a higher frequency, more in alignment with me and my soul and my future, what is intended for my future self. Or I have come into a deeper connection to another already beautiful friendship or connection. Or it's been a catalyzer for the person to grow themselves or to look at things a little bit differently.
I love that because it just gives so many perspectives of what can happen when you say yes to you, when you honor your boundaries, when you honor your yes, you honor your no, and you honor what you feel. And I think that's what I want to call out is like how we get in touch with our feelings. And I want to talk a little bit into entrepreneurship just because you're such a creative matrix and doing so much in the world with your work. How do you, with the boundaries and with the self-care and everything you've built, how has that affected your business and what you do for work?
Thank you so much first for everything that you just said. It's made it monumentally better. It is unlocked for me opportunities that have so far surpassed my dreams. You know, things I couldn't even fathom, things I would never even imagine.
Right.
You know, it's informed everything. And I also realized, you know, there were so many years that I was working either for an institution or as an entrepreneur that I was not boundaried. And I was just depleted constantly. I felt I had a purpose. I felt this bigger mission, this assignment on my life. But because I didn't have the boundaries, I wasn't living in a way that supported my purpose. I wasn't living in a way that I was actually using my endurance for greater good. I was just using my endurance to patch holes in my ship, you know, to patch up the leaks. And so when I started kind of operating out of my healing, I started living my healing, you know, when I started operating out of my boundaries, I made more money than I've ever made in my life. I was connecting to the divine right opportunities because I was saying no to a lot of things that didn't feel like the perfect fit, you know? And so at this point in my life, if it's not an ecstatic yes, it's a no. You know, life is too short. My plate is too full, and my priorities are too meaningful for me to make room for any work in the world that is less than an ecstatic yes.
Oh, I love that. Ecstatic yes. It has to be an ecstatic full body yes.
Yes.
I love that. Well, thank you so much. You're doing so much. I can't wait to get into your new book. You have a book out now that people can enjoy around crystals, crystal bliss. Can you talk about like your inspiration behind that book and what people can look forward to?
Yeah. Well, so Crystal Bliss came out in, I think, 2017.
That's what I said.
Yeah, maybe 2017. And, you know, it's funny because at the time, it was not the norm, I think, for a woman of color to have a crystal book or a book on chakras and rituals. And so it was interesting because I remember coming out with a book and the community that I wanted to be in service of with that book, specifically women of color, it was like, what is this stuff? You know, we talked about this on my podcast, like this kind of like when you have this vision that the collective consciousness has not begun to awaken to yet, you're kind of like, did God really tell me to quit my successful job in entertainment to sell crystals? You know, and I knew it was a yes, but it didn't make sense.
Right.
So in that book, I was really longing to create this pathway of connection to the sacred tools that have existed for millions of years. I was really looking to demystify the use of sacred objects and ritual and knowledge of our internal energetic systems and the frequencies of crystals to aid us on the journey, you know, and I believe I did that with that book. I love it. And for anyone that's listening that hasn't connected with the book, it's a really beautiful introduction to working with crystal energy and working with our energetic bodies and creating little rituals and little moments for yourself. And I break down crystals in the book, especially in how we may use them more in the mainstream world. So one of the chapters is, for instance, great crystals for purpose, crystals for career. So it includes stones that are real energetic powerhouses for supporting the energy of what is your mission? What is your purpose? How can you kind of amplify your magnetism? How can you call things in that are uniquely for you with more ease?
Right. Oh, I love that. And I'm so excited. As you see, I have crystals all over my home.
You have amazing.
But yeah, I have to let you meet Athena Rose after. She's like my biggest crystal. So I have to allow you to connect after.
Oh, thank you.
But thank you so much. I definitely look. I want the physical copy now. Like I got the digital copy.
And I had like a little bag for you too. But I'll send it to you.
Okay.
I would love to send you a little something.
I love that. I love that. And I just want to just acknowledge, like, I love the part for me. I love the chakras and our spiritual energy centers. So really resonating because something that I love to do is just really work with those energy centers, especially when it comes to crystals. So I think you just broke that down so beautifully. And it's a way that everyone can like tap in, you know, with their work and their body, but also with these energy centers that are often affected just by going through life. Like it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter how much work you've done, using the crystals for energy and raising your vibration, which we were talking about earlier when we were outside, it's vibrational. And so many things in like plants and crystals and so many sacred objects, as you mentioned, they have this vibrational frequency that can help us get through some things that aren't that easy.
Yes. You know, it's about the layering of the healing, right? Like one thing will never do all of it for us.
Right.
So, you know, it's like if you're in need of deep healing, maybe just using a crystal, but not choosing to look at yourself and actively engage with your patterns, that's not going to cause, you know, this miraculous, sustainable, lived experience of change and growth.
Right.
But it can be a profound tool when layered with all the other beautiful, expansive work that we could be doing with ourselves. And so, you know, and I say this too about therapy. It's like therapy is such a phenomenal tool. It's such a powerful tool, but it's not the only thing that you should be doing.
Right.
You know, it is one of the things, and it creates a beautiful, deepened, connection to our language, to our understanding our experiences, to beginning to expand our view on what has happened and what can happen.
Right.
But it's not the only thing. We also need to remove the trauma from our bodies through somatic work, through, you know, different physical integrations. We can also bring in, you know, new diets, new ways of eating and connecting and relating to food that actually nourish and support our brain activity, our hearts, our, you know, our bodies. It's the holistic approach. Wholeness can never come through one thing. We need to be consistently looking at how can we support ourselves by nourishing all of those four pillars, you know?
Yes. Ashe. So good, so beautiful. And last question, if you were to recommend 3 books,
okay.
What would they be?
These are some of my favorite OG classics of all time. The first would be Deepak Chopra's 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. That book is just so, it's such a beautiful daily companion. It's a really short read, but it's one that you can actively use every single day and focus on a different law. And that is just one of my favorite things to connect to every day in my practice. A second book that I love by one of my sheroes, who I had the chance to have and on the podcast and spend time with, Elizabeth Lesser, the co-founder of the Omega Institute. She has many powerful books, but one of her early reads was Broken Open. And it changed the way that I understood the purpose of pain.
Wow.
It changed, I'm someone whose early curriculum before I transcended that karma was really rooted in learning through grief. I've had a life that has had quite a bit of grief in so many different kinds of ways. And for me, that made me always feel unseen, unprotected, unloved by God. And the way that book really gifted me new perspectives on how to work with grief, how to work with that path. Right. It really changed me. It really freed me. And I think the third book that I would have to say would be The Way of Mastery. The Way of Mastery is not a book that is easily found. If you Google it, you'll find it through a foundation page, and they'll ship you the book, but it's called The Way of Mastery, The Teachings of Yeshua. So it's a book rooted in Christ consciousness. And so it's really the incredible teachings of Christ as an ascended master without, it is not a religious book. It is not rooted in Christianity, and it is not rooted in some of what I feel is like the dogma of some of that belief system, but it's rooted in the purity of a life lived by an exceptional being and ways to make those deep teachings of higher consciousness and divine love and unity, how to make them present in your everyday life.
Oh, that's beautiful. I can't wait to just really give you, I think I've read the first one, Deepak Chopra's, but the other two I haven't. So I look forward to checking those out. So
they're so good. Tell me what you think.
I will. And then let everyone know where they can find you, where they can enjoy your book, Crystal Bliss.
Yes.
And are you able to let us get a sneak peek on what's coming, the book coming at all?
A little bit.
Okay.
The book that I'm rooted on is really the book that I'm in the midst of writing right now is really rooted in transcending pathways of pain, transcending pathways of trauma, and ways to work with some of that karma, but also to be done with it. Yes. Healing with grace and ease.
Ooh, I can't wait for that.
Thank you.
But I will wait. I'm so excited.
And everyone can connect with me on Instagram. If you're into daily meditation, I lead daily meditation on the Chopra app. But if you go to my Instagram at Devi Brown, one, I would love to hear what you thought about this episode. And two, my link in bio will connect you to my book, my newsletter, my podcast, Dropping Gems, which Koya graced me with just so much beauty and depth by coming on my show. So I hope you'll listen to the episode she did with me on my show. And you can connect to all the things there.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here, Debbie. I appreciate you. This is so much fun. And thank all you for watching. If you haven't already, definitely leave us a review. Let us know what you like. Let us know if you have any questions. Even if you have some stuff you didn't like, you can drop that in the review as well, because it only helps me create a better show for you. So if you haven't already, please, please, please leave a review. And if you're on social, let us know your biggest takeaways. What did you love? What was triggering? Because we went over a lot. And until next time, love yourself, love others, and love the world one day at a time. One breath at a time. Peace and love.
I just want to say to you, thank you. Thank you so much for all you are in the world, because your existence, it's just such an inspiration to millions of people. The way that you have consistently shared yourself, shared your practice, shared your tools, shared your deep wisdom for so many years, and especially in such a pioneering way, you know, when that wasn't something that people actively knew was available to them. You were there and you were creating in a really big way, and you continue to share yourself in such a big way. So I want to honor you, Queen. I want to say thank you so much for your life and for your work. Thank you for having me in your sacred space and on your show. And I'm just so grateful you exist.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I honor you. I appreciate you. I love you. And I thank God we're in each other's lives. So grateful.
Ashe.
Ashe. I just want to take a moment to say thank you for being part of the Get Loved Up community. I like to share topics and people making a positive impact in the world, and your feedback means the world to me. If you haven't already left a review, please leave a 5-star review and let me know what you want to hear more of on the show. I'm here for you, and together we're making the world a better place, one day at a time, one show at a time. Thank you for listening.